Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us. Jason and I were just chatting about a pet peeve of mine, and I'm going to unload on those who use this device in hour number 2. So if you don't want to hear Vincent get angry, you might want to just skip hour number 2. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Hour number 1 is with Nurse Tracy. We're going to be talking about Morgellons. Hour number 2 is tips from my book, plus a little bit of Vinny unloading on the careless and the reckless. Welcome, Tracy.
Hi, Vinny. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. And
I want to guess on what you're going to unload on, but I'll just be quiet. I think I have an idea.
Okay. Well, I'm livid. I believe, Nurse Tracy, that we are going down. I absolutely, positively believe it. I see it in the attitudes of people. And I believe that there are 2 factors that will cause us to go down. One is the sum of all individual greed and the sum of all individual carelessness.
I concur.
I really believe that.
I concur.
And carelessness is, people throwing trash out on the side of the road. I mean, that's a small thing, right? I mean, it's awful, but it's a small thing. And then carelessness is, let's build some nuclear reactors. Let's drill holes in space with rockets. There's a party on the other side of the ocean, and it's a royal thing, and we can we'll have an entourage, and we'll have some jets fly over there, and that kind of nonsense. Or if an elected government official wants to play golf, and planes and helicopters and Secret Service and all that, it's an enormous expense, and we're told to conserve but we don't. We think that, well, if they can do it, what's one more piece of litter, what's one more? Yeah.
Take the train.
Right.
Well, they have 4 airplanes, 3 helicopters, 34 cars, 1 individual.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly right.
It's really frustrating.
I'm talking about the sum of, and because they are not considerate of anyone around them. So I'm going to make the case to boycott.
Sheep and cattle to them. We're of no value. We breathe their oxygen.
Yeah.
And the listeners are going to, probably your listeners already understand this, but it's called the deep state, and furthermore, it's called the Illuminati. That's been going on for thousands of years, planning these things through the Council of Foreign Relations and, the Council of 300, which most people really aren't even aware of, By the way, so we're supposed to talk today about Morgellons, which I want to talk about that, but I want to talk a couple of things about vaccines, if you don't mind, because of what's going on in Samoa.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
And first, what I'd like to say, though, is I want to read a quote from Dr. Henry Kissinger. And you're not going to find this on the World Wide Web because they've buried it and they say it doesn't exist. So Snopes will tell you, the basement dwellers will tell you that this is not true, but this is a direct quote from him in one of those meetings, so probably the Council on Foreign Relations or something equivalent to that. Once the herd accepts mandatory forcible vaccination, it's game over. They will accept anything, forcible blood or organ donation, for the quote-unquote greater good. We can genetically modify children and sterilize them for the quote-unquote greater good. control sheep minds, and you control the herd. Vaccine makers stand to make billions, and many of you in this room today are investors. It's a big win-win. We thin out the herd, and the herd pays us for providing extermination services. And then he said, now, what's for lunch, huh? Now, this is the former
Many years
Secretary
ago,
of State, right?
Right. Henry Kissinger.
Actual foreigner. Scary. Very scary. But this is their real plan that people can't seem to get a grasp on. Why would they do that? These are good people. They care about us. They don't. None of the above. They're evil of all evil, and they do not care about you 1 ounce. Furthermore, why do Bill Gates and George Soros, why do they have a vaccine manufacturing plant in Sierra Leone, Africa? They test these vaccines on the African people because they don't have the same kind of communication available to them that you and I do, you see. They've been banned. Bill Gates Foundation got kicked out of India recently, and he was kicked out of another country. They're not allowed to be there because they brought these vaccines into these countries, and their kids are becoming paralyzed. They're dying. Many other things to find out the effectiveness of it. You see, they don't want to cure the quote-unquote diseases, but by the way they cause. They want to see how fast and what means they need to use to reduce the population. So, go ahead, Vinny. I'm sorry. I totally interrupted you.
Okay, well, I got a couple comments on things that you said, just exclamation points. Many years ago, I met a guy, in the late 90s, met a guy by the name of Len Horowitz. He's a Harvard-trained dentist. And he and Mrs. Finelli and I were talking, just the three of us, in person. And we were talking about AIDS and Ebola. And he said that AIDS and Ebola are definitely man-made.
Right.
And they erupted, those diseases erupted in 3 places simultaneously, and one of them was in Africa. And there was a contest. There was a military contest to figure out how to make a surgically delivered weapon, surgical strike, precise kind of a strike that would be absolutely deadly, for which there would be no cure. Okay, and so it was created. There was a government contract to produce this, and so that is AIDS and Ebola. And it started out at one of the places was in Africa. And it came from green monkeys, people said. Well, yes, it did. Because it was engineered to jump from monkeys to people. Monkeys were used, it was human, it was a carcinoma, human, that would be accepted by humans, but it was developed using green monkeys. So, yeah, that part's true. And the Africa part
HIV,
is true.
Lyme's disease, all of these things are created in a lab. Morgellons. So we'll talk about that in a little while. But I want to touch just a little bit on Samoa, if I can. A girlfriend of mine that is a friend of mine on Facebook that's aware of what vaccines are doing and causing, and she fights. She goes to the, Jefferson City, her and her sisters, and I work with another doctor down here that also is aware of it. But and if you could remind me, I want to go back to that doctor I'm talking about as far as Morgellons goes, because she asked me a question the other day when I was in the office on one of her patients. So anyways, this is on the measles outbreak in Samoa. So my girlfriend Mandy wrote this. She said, I haven't said much about what's going on in Samoa, but let's look at the timeline, because what you're hearing from the media won't give the whole picture, which is a big surprise. The country of Samoa, low vaccination rates, only 200,000 total population. A shipment of MMR vaccines gets sent to Samoa, and Big Pharma starts an aggressive campaign of forced mass vaccination. A terrible measles outbreak occurs. The children begin dropping dead. Now, these are in the vaccinated population. They received the vaccination. They did a fear-mongering campaign. Media worldwide begins telling the tale of a frightening measles outbreak, fear-mongering parents everywhere into complete panic and conveniently leaving out the fact that all of the children in Samoa who are sick and dying have just been vaxxed. It is discovered that 65,000 vials of the aforementioned vaccines were improperly stored during transport, which makes the virus highly susceptible to mutation. Their vaccines are the reason this outbreak occurred and why it got so deadly. The government responds by treating with Panadol, Tylenol, and antibiotics. This exacerbates the disease and allows it to run rampant, killing even more. A very brave man named Edwin Tomasi begins accepting shipments of vitamins A and C. Even the WHO, World Health Organization, cites that measles is a vitamin A deficiency, and he begins administering them to the sick children. Every child who gets Edwin's vitamin treatments gets well and lives. That's right, 100% success rate. The Samoan government's response, everyone must be vaccinated, again, with a different lot of vaccines. No one's allowed to leave their home. No one's allowed to go in public roads. If you are non-vaxxed, you must nail red flags to your house, and then they came in by government vehicles, took them, and forced them to take the vaccine. The next step, Big Pharma announces they have a magical new MMR vaccine that will be available soon. Totally not suspicious at all. Yesterday, which was the day before yesterday actually, Edwin, that's right, the man with the 100% cure rate of the sick and dying kids, is arrested for healing kids. All communication cut off now. We have no idea how he's being treated or what will happen to him. His only regret is not being able to help more of the Samoan children. Lastly, the Samoan government admits that they have tested the strain of the measles and know whether it is a vaccine strain, mutagenic form of a vaccine strain, or wild measles. But they will not share with anyone that information. So we know that it can't be the wild, because if it was that, it would fit their fear narrative and serve their purpose. But because it isn't, it's an unflattering result they don't want spread about. If you think this can't happen in America, oh goodness, this is absolutely the goal. Senator Pan in California has stated that he doesn't want the non-vaxxed allowed in grocery stores or any public space. And that's not just kids, that's adults who aren't up to date too. So that means you and me, who quote-unquote need all 72 doses of vaccines that the kids get, plus any of the 276 new vaccines that Big Pharma is trying to get passed through the FDA. If this were about health, they would have continued what was working. This is population control. Bill Gates said in a TED Talk that vaccines were a great choice for population control because it was one that people choose themselves. You can view his talk on YouTube, which they're trying to bury, by the way. We must rise up. This isn't about being pro or anti anything. Those are only terms.
Nurse Tracy, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We're going into a break. Nurse Tracy's with us, and we're talking about vaccines. And we're talking about those people who think that they're so important, and they are forcing us to take them. As a matter of fact, pretty much every baby boomer has had vaccines. We've been forced into taking them. Maybe they said it was voluntary, but everybody did it. And I know that when children are born, they get them in the hospital. I know that when they go to the doctor's office, the doctor says, okay, we're going to give your child these vaccines. And then the children get extremely sick. They run fevers. Some die. Some I believe, have maladies later on, like asthma. I believe that spinal defects are a result of it. Organ failure is a result of it. And premature death and a life of misery is a result of it. But the big bad people who are in charge of this make us take them. And if you want to have your child be exposed to homosexuality and send them to the government training camp, the public school system, you will have your child vaccinated unless you use the religious exemption, which is getting more and more difficult to do. So what we have now is these are just bad people, really nasty, evil people who are willing to have you kill your children through their vaccines. And I know you have friends who are nurses. I'm not talking about you specifically, Nurse Tracy, but I know that the people who are in class today know nurses in practices in their little hamlets and cities, and those nurses are in the business of administering the vaccines that are deadly. I know this because I know some of them. And so you may think, well, do I get it from the doctor? Is it safer to get the vaccine at, my family physician? Or is it safer to get the vaccine from the public facility? The government delivered vaccines, which is safer? None is safe. So those are my thoughts. Tracy, do you concur or do you disagree?
No, I concur. We're being systematically poisoned on multiple levels. And I know that you have people on your show weekly that talk about it. I mean, Dr. Shealy talks about fluoride, and it is neurotoxin. It's poisoning and killing people and dumbing them down, let alone any other thing that could be in, public water systems, lithium, chloride, or chlorine. Who knows what they put in there? We don't know, So with vaccines, we and all of these different things, including Morgellons, when we get there, I'm going to tell you that, patents were developed to develop this biowarfare. But we must rise up. It isn't about being pro or anti-anything. Those are only terms that the bad faith actors and vaccine extremists use to divide us. When we think we're enemies, we're easier to break apart. This is about being pro-body sovereignty. This is about being pro-body ownership. This is about the belief that no government should have the right to force any medical choice on anyone's body ever. And that concludes what my friend Mandy wrote about the Samoan people and these forced vaccinations. Now, as you're aware, that California mandates that you cannot go to public schools if you're not vaccinated. Senator Pan, who works for Big Pharma and gets humongous amounts of money from Big Pharma, China specifically, because Chinese are manufacturing our vaccines. Now, if you're ever at a war with someone or you're angry with another country and you're making their vaccinations, wouldn't that be a way that is not regulated by the FDA? As a matter of fact, they just came out last week and said they're not regulating what's put in the vaccines that are coming out of China. Would that be a way of soft kill warfare?
Of course. Absolutely.
So California is mandating them. New York is mandating them. Now, Governor Cuomo, who is in this deep state conglomerate, by the way, he is now saying that they're wanting to make homeschooling illegal because somewhere in the number of 50% of the parents have pulled their kids out of public schools because of the vaccine mandate in the state of New York. Now he wants to make homeschooling illegal. It's absurd.
I got to tell you, if our children have all been homeschooled, and if you see a homeschooled child in a supermarket, you can see that, you know that child's homeschooled from 100 feet away. It's that clear because of their behavior, the better behavior. We'll be right back. Quite an upsetting broadcast with Nurse Tracy. We're talking about vaccines and killing, wounding, maiming your children, and you're being forced to do it by the government. And some people are even doing it themselves. I went, Tracy, I was between where you are and where we are. I was in Springfield, Missouri. You're in Branson, and I'm about 50 miles away of Springfield. And there was a sign at one of these drugstores. You could, 20 cents. For only 20 cents, you could get your flu vaccine. And I was in Sam's Club, and they had a table, this was months ago, and for free. If I only had the time, I could just roll up my sleeve and get the jab for the shingles vaccine for free. What a great deal. And Mrs. Finelli was next to me, and we were holding hands walking through the store, and I said, Mrs. Finelli, geez, if we only had the time, we could get a free shingles vaccine. Too bad we don't have the time. And we walked right past them. People are dumb as
anything you get for free has some sort of attachment to it. It's not free.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that everyone was taught that growing up. Free means free.
The way we were taught is there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I like to think of, if I had lunch with Prince Charles, okay, if I were offered lunch, I know that at the end of that lunch, I'd have to pay for it.
Right.
Yes.
There would be some strings attached.
Right.
Hey, Vinny, Doc wanted me to tell you that last week and this week, the first half hour, I have not been on the show. It's been 30 minutes of Doc Ram from yesterday.
Okay.
So the first 30 minutes, the listeners haven't heard me.
Well, they will. They will. Sometimes there's a delay, but what'll happen is he listening live, or is he listening?
No, he's listening live
on Genesis Communications Network.
Yeah.
Or GCNlive.com. So, Jason, what's up? What's up? Nurse Tracy's husband is a doctor, a medical practicing doctor, a DO, and he's listening, and we're not live. What's up?
It's the same thing happened last week. The first 30 minutes weren't live.
Okay. The archives, so class, if you're listening now and you want to listen to what Nurse Tracy had to say last week, which was last Friday, hour number 1, or today, Friday, hour number 1, if you missed the first part of it, what you can do is you can go to the archives on GCNlive.com, select USA Prepares, that's this broadcast, and you'll be able to listen. If you'd like, you can go to the Ron Gibson channel, Gibson, Ron as in Ronald, Gibson channel on YouTube, and you can look for USA Prepares and look for the date, and you'll find Nurse Tracy, or you can type in Vincent Finelli YouTube, Nurse Tracy, and you'll find it. So you'll be able to listen that way. I apologize, Tracy, for this difficulty. It's not within my control to fix it.
Right.
And not only that.
They don't want us talking about this stuff, so which would be a good opportunity for me to let you and the listeners know I'm not suicidal. My car works just fine, far as I know. Brakes nothing's wrong with my brakes. Mm-hmm. I have absolutely no heart diseases that would cause me spontaneous death or a massive heart attack all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. Those things need to be on the record, because if something happens to me, it was nothing medically or that should be happening to me. I'm not suicidal again.
And the same goes for me. All of those things apply to me as well. Tracy, I wanted to tell you this before we went into the break, but so I'll just say it now. You mentioned Henry Kissinger. We had a very famous instructor who was on the air with me every week. His name was Bob Chapman, Chapman. He was a brilliant financial advisor. And for some reason, he took a liking to our family, the Finelli family. Our son was his youngest ever subscriber to his financial report. And he really liked us, and he would call me. And I had his telephone number, which hardly anybody else had.
Right.
And, he was in hiding because he was afraid of being killed. Well, here's what happened. One day, I asked him, we were talking about Henry Kissinger. I said to him, Bob, what would Henry Kissinger's rank be in the global scheme of things? Where would he be? And he said number 15. I kind of thought he'd be higher up than that, but he's number 15, according to Bob Chapman.
Uh-huh.
What happened next was horrible. He soon died of pancreatic cancer right after saying that.
That doesn't surprise me. Mm-hmm. That's how evil these people are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been 150 some. Just recently, a gal, I wish I could remember her name. I don't have it right in front of me, but she wrote different books. She was an author, young gal, on they're fiction books, but based on how we're being manipulated in this whole vaccine, dilemma. She died. 35. I think she was 35 years old. Now, the official cause of death hasn't been released yet, but at first it was committed suicide from 2 bullet wounds to the back of the head.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, not possible for all the medical people out there that, don't believe that vaccines harm you. You don't die from two bullet wounds to the back of the head.
Nurse Tracy, I've been to your and your husband's office, medical office in Branson. Is that still up and running?
Yes, it's Victory Healing and Wellness. And we have retirement hours right now, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 10 to 1. Doc's mostly retired. But we're doing a whole lot of medical marijuana certifications, and that I can talk to you about that on another show too. But our endocannabinoid system that's been severely suppressed since the alcohol prohibition was lifted. Alcohol prohibition was lifted, and then they prohibited hemp and THC, from being produced, medical marijuana. So we're doing a lot of certifications for people, and they're having really, really good results getting off opiates. It's helping people, get off alcohol, plus helping with their pain for different diseases also, It's just going to be amazing what transforms through this process that we're going through right now. But I'd like to come on and talk about that someday too, and hemp, because
Absolutely.
I'm trying to be a hemp grower, and all of the benefits that they have for the different receptors in our body that have been severely suppressed, because some foods give us, endocannabinoids, but not enough to make our body become homeostasis, back to central and functioning properly. There's just so many articles, even government-buried articles with the National Institutes of Health and PubMed, articles and different doctors that, there's one in Maine, Dr. Sulak, Dustin Sulak. His website is healer.com. He has YouTube videos talking about the endocannabinoid system and which ones you need that help certain different disease process become, alleviate many problems without having to be on pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical industry's fighting it big time right now because they know what it does for our bodies. So, anyway, sorry we get so sidetracked, but I could talk about, many different things. That's what I do all day is read. Read.
Tracy, I have a quick question while we're on hemp. Well, I bought 2 square balers for hay, and I wanted to experiment with growing hemp for our cattle, not THC, but just because of the health benefits for the animals. I don't want them to be high. I just want them to have the right amount of nutrients and supplements. And one of the ways I thought I could do that would be with hemp, not marijuana. What are your thoughts about that? Have you read anything about that?
Well, it's excellent, because before they prohibited hemp, they fed all of our food had hemp. The ground that we planted our gardens in, it gives it nitrogen. The plant cleans up the dirt, basically, gives it minerals and stuff that the ground has been depleted of. And our animals all had it. So then when we ate that meat or our vegetables or, anything that we ate or consumed had a higher amount of it, which kept people healthier. So it's just common sense that it would alleviate the same issues in any type of farming animals or even dogs and cats. I mean, they have CBD oil for, household animals, and I have mine, actually. One has diabetes, and my boxer is really old, so she has arthritis really bad. So we give them a hemp product with the company that I'm working through, CBD oil, and they're really improving. Like, you can tell in their demeanors that they're feeling better just by the way they're behaving. So in cattle, it's going to bring them back to homeostasis because they're not getting the nutrients in the hay or the grain or the anything. Matter of fact, they're getting poisons. You can't avoid it. Dr. Seeley, did the study on sent in the water samples. And you'll know more about this than I do, but sent in the water samples, and 68% of them had Roundup.
Mm-hmm.
Tested for Roundup in our rainwater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that means everyone's getting sprayed. You know what I mean, with toxic chemicals. So by using these plants, you're going to give your body the utmost of nutrients that it needs to reverse some of these processes, or at least help them.
Nurse Tracy, I'd like to mention to you that I'd like to invite you and your husband, Doc, to come to the farm here, and I'd like to talk about hemp, and I'd like to show you what we would like to do, and we could share information, and maybe we can go forward. What do you think?
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
All right. So just, let me know when it works for you, and we can do that. I'd love to see you and Doc again. I'm very concerned about what's happening in our environment. I don't know anyone who says, I feel so much better than I used to. I'm talking about in the last 10 years, they feel better than they used to 10 years ago. People are hacking, coughing, they're short on breath, they're getting way bigger, way more. They have all kinds of maladies. They're stiff. They can't lift. They can't move. They're riding around in scooters. In a Chinese factory outlet, they're pushing those carts around. But the carts are there to be like a walker. And they're leaning on the cart as if it's a tool to help them get around because they can't get around without it. We're seeing more and more of that. Are you as well?
Well, there's multiple levels of soft kill warfare that have been implemented, including this Morgellons, which, we're not going to have enough time to talk about. And I'm just going to tell you ahead of time, I'm not an expert in Morgellons, but I've been dealing with it personally with my very best friend, has Morgellons, and it took her a long, long time to figure out what it was, and then we found the patents through Stanford University. The professor then moved to Northwest University, and he's since, quote-unquote, died this summer, which we don't know if he did or not because people are becoming more and more aware of it, probably in hiding or moved to a different country or, But yes, they're sicker, they're overweight, they're becoming down with diabetes at younger and younger ages.
Hold that thought. Nurse Tracy's with us. And Nurse Tracy, do you want to give out any information on how we can find you, find your office, contact
if you go on Facebook, Victory Healing and Wellness, follow our page, and you can message me through Messenger on our clinic webpage or Facebook page. It's under Victory Healing and Wellness, and it's in Branson, Missouri.
Okay. And do you guys offer vaccines in your practice?
There's no way.
I just wanted to make, Nurse Tracy, I did not mean to insult you. I just wanted to make it very clear to our class that...
we have kids come for their baby visits. We just had a 17-month-old last month.
Mm-hmm.
And parents are finding us because we're not necessarily pediatric. He takes care of everyone from 17 months to 84. He's qualified, But when I knew that this kid was going to come in, I was frantically searching the internet, which I found a sheet of what we need to look for, and you know what I'm saying. And
right.
And of course, on the sheet is what vaccines they're supposed to have, and of course we skipped that part. That's not applicable in ours. That's why they're bringing their children to us because they know that we'll protect them. But we've had patients that have gotten their vaccines through the pharmacy because that's where the campaign is, that you don't have to have you have to have a doctor's order for every other drug you get, but when you get a vaccine, you don't have to. The pharmacist can just tell you need it, And the few that have come through because the pharmacy will fax that they got their flu shot and their pneumococcal vaccine, I just become enraged because within a week they're calling me, telling me I got to come in because I'm getting congestion in my chest. I'm like, no kidding you are. Why don't you go get another flu shot?
Mm-hmm.
That's literally what I tell them because it enrages me. Doc would never tell you to go get a flu shot. Never. Matter of fact, in the past, prior to our knowledge now, we were trained the same way all the other medical professionals out there have been trained. So we believe that it also was until we started researching, you see. So in the past in our clinics, say 15, 20 years ago, we would carry the flu shot, give them to people. You know, doc's like, I'm sorry, if I ever gave you a flu shot, I'm really sorry, I didn't know. Pediatricians are coming out and apologizing to their patients. They're absolutely horrified because they don't want to harm them. You know, there's all these little kids getting ear infections, ear infections and getting tubes in their ears, and they have allergies and so forth. Well, if you look at the vaccine insert side effects, which, by the way, they're altering them. They're altering what's in the vaccines. They're not putting all the aluminum and mercury because people are catching on, so they're taking those out of it, which normally would be against the FDA guidelines. But since the FDA can do whatever they want to and tell people whatever they want to or not disclose what they don't want to, you see, that's how that's working. But under these side effects, it's listed as otitis media. Otitis media is ear infections. Unless the common everyday man that's not been medically trained looks up what's otitis media, right? They're not going to know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I wanted to say one more thing. We're going to have to do a different show. Sorry for the more gallons, but I put my life on the line talking to the audience about this stuff, and so do you. And I was sitting here thinking to myself, why do we do this? Well, number one, we don't want people to be sick. Why does Dr. Sheely do this every week, multiple times a week? Why does he run that clinic and has done so for, decades, holistic medicine? And it's kind of frustrating to me that people would, accuse us of being conspiracy theorists and crazy, and now I just tell them, yeah, I am. You know what I'm saying? Because then the battle's over. Go ahead and call me that. It's like sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me,
I respond a little differently. I respond.
But we're really putting our lives on the line.
Conspiracy fact. Conspiracy fact.
Or conspiracy realist. Because right now we are being massively vindicated. If you've been paying attention, and it's going to come out more and more and more. By the way, if there's anyone that listens to your show that has a direct contact with Donald Trump, could you please let him know that I'm willing to be the General Surgeon for the United States of America? Okay? It doesn't take a medical degree to not poison the population. And I won't take one daggum penny from Big Pharma, not one penny. But I want to be the Surgeon General because I'm going to get rid of a bunch of this garbage.
Sounds great to me. Sounds great to me. Tracy, I'm looking forward to your visit here at the farm.
Yeah, give me a call after the show.
And also, I'm looking forward to a future broadcast with you. It'll be on a Friday, same time, same station. And it looks, your ratings today were pretty darn high. So there are people that have tuned in just to hear you. So I just wanted to mention that. And there's Tracy. Thank you so much for being with us.
All right.
There you have it. So we'll have her back again and again. It'll be on a Friday, hour number 1. I'll be right back after top of the hour news and breaks. I'm going to be talking about some things that will upset you and some tips from my book. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. If you'd like to call, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933. I'm going to do my best not to lose my temper. I'm going to talk about some things that really bother me. And I'm going to give you some tips from my book. That's what this hour is all about. So, what bothers me? Well, I was at a business office, and I was offered a cup of coffee. Mrs. Finelli was with us, and they have this K-Cup machine, these little tiny single-serving cups of coffee. And I've been to Sam's Club and Walmart, Chinese factory outlet, and they sell that you can buy these cups. And for your convenience, you can pop one of these little bad boys into the machine. You can make a cup of coffee to your single cup. And so people buy these machines. And they are so expensive. I can't believe how much these machines cost. So during the break, I went to Amazon, and you can get a Keurig, which is like the original brand, for, as little as maybe $60 for the tiny one, the mini one, for great Christmas present. You can use this little machine to do all kinds of damage to the planet. So for $60, you can get the mini one, and for a lot more, like this is from Amazon, $267, normally $334, but you can get it for only $267, and it would be the commercial one that you'd have in an office, or you can get, the K Duo Plus machine for $225 from Amazon. Now, what does it cost to make a cup of coffee with this machine? Between 50 and 75 cents per cup. So I did a quick calculation. I wanted to know, how much is a cup of coffee at our farm? I'm going to tell you. So we buy coffee when it's on sale, and the 30-something ounce can, like 34 ounces, it's about $8.84, maybe $9 a can. And we can make, using 2 ounces of coffee, we can make 10 cups. We don't make it really, really strong. We don't make it like mud. We make it so that it is pleasant to drink. So if you do the arithmetic, you'll find out that we would use about 52 cents worth of coffee daily. And then we use the brown filter sometimes. We have one of those inexpensive Mr. Coffee type or Black & Decker coffee machines. And that thing's been going for at least 15 years. So, and how much was it? It was $20 or $15. Works fine. Clean it out with some white vinegar every once in a while and flush it out with some filtered water, and it works great. So if you were to do it that way, it's 52 cents for the 10 cups of coffee. All 10 cups, 5.2 cents per cup. And then the filter would be, for all 10 cups, 2 cents. And then 1 cent for electricity. You had 52 plus 2 cents for the filter plus 1 cent for the electricity. That's 55 cents for 10 cups. It's 5.5 cents a cup. That's 1/10. That's 1/10 or less than the cost of 1 cup of a K-Cup or Keurig type single serving coffee. But here's where I'm frosted. I don't mind if people are so stupid and so ignorant that they want to make a single cup of coffee. Where I have a problem is the enormous amount of waste that's a result of it. So where do those K-Cups go at the end? They go in the trash, right? So how many of these? Well, in 2014, that was before this thing really got moving, 9 billion. 9 billion of them, well, actually that was in 2013. 9 billion of these K-Cups ended up in the landfills in 2013 or were incinerated. 9 billion. This Keurig machine was invented in 1997, 15 years later. There are 20 million of these machines in the American homes, 20 million. So there are 20 million stupid Americans, ignorant Americans, reckless Americans, careless Americans, 20 million. Now, that doesn't mean just 20 million cups, one a day. No, because there are multiple people in the family. So this is per home, 20 million. So far, they've sold over 30 with a billion of these disposable coffee pods. They are made with 4 layers of specialized plastics, topped with a plastic metal foil. They are virtually unrecyclable because there's different plastics. You can't just melt them down and reuse them because they contain different types of plastic and this metal foil or plastic metal foil cover. And they're non-biodegradable. What a great idea. Who came up with that? So let's say a person, I won't make it me. Okay, let's say I lived in a neighborhood. I don't live on a farm. But let's say I lived in a neighborhood. Let's say I had a quarter of an acre, half an acre, third of an acre. And I had neighbors all around me, neighbors to the left, to the right, behind me, and across the street. And I saved up those little Keurig K-Cups because I didn't want to put them in the landfill. And I had an old Weber grill in the backyard. And I put that Weber grill in the middle of the backyard. And so let's say I had 3 cups of coffee a day with this silly machine. 3 cups times 7 days a week, that'd be 21 cups. So, as someone who doesn't want to fill up the landfill, I decide I'll just burn them in the Weber grill that I don't use anymore, right? So every week I just go out there and I get some charcoal lighter fluid, sprinkle it on these K-Cups in the Weber grill, kind of a dome-shaped grill. I leave the lid off so there's plenty of air so it doesn't smoke too much black smoke. I set them on fire. To do the right thing for the neighborhood, right? What do you think would happen? You think any of my neighbors would come screaming at me? What are you doing? Have you lost your mind? Well, I just K-Cups, come on. What's the big deal? 30 billion of them. So, I'm livid about that. Absolutely livid. How can we be so dumb as to buy these silly machines because it's convenient? Okay, so let's move on to Starbucks. I know it's popular. I know it's a status symbol. I don't have the status because I don't walk around with a disposable Starbucks cup in my hand. I've only had one cup of Starbucks. And the only reason was one of our meetup group walked up to me, heard me say that I've never had a cup and I never would buy a cup. He walked up to me and handed it to me. It's like, hold this. I held it. He goes, that's yours. Now you can't say you haven't had a cup of Starbucks coffee. That was the first and last. I'm not interested in that status symbol. I'm not interested in having a Keurig brand coffee maker or something similar, or a cheap version, an unbranded version of something that uses these disposable, trash the environment, pollute the world machines. Starbucks. So how many cups of coffee do you think they sell a day? How many cups do you think they use a day? 8 million. Actually, it's a little more than 8 million. Think about that. 8 million cups go into the trash every day. For years. There's no end in sight. So what would happen if you took your Starbucks cups and, poured out any little drops of, liquid that remain in that cup and, saved them up for, the Saturday afternoon burning in your Weber grill. And save them up there. Wait till you get about 10, 20, save them up and then light them on fire. And do the same thing with your Keurig K-Cups. Light them on fire. What would happen? I'm not suggesting you do it. I'm just trying to make a point. How ridiculous this is. So what is the waste at the Finelli family from making a 10-cup pot of coffee each day? Well, we use about 1 cent of electricity if we were to buy it, but we generate our own. So that goes away. And we use the brown coffee filters sometimes. And they're maybe 2 cents a piece. You buy 100 of them for less than $2. You get those at the Chinese factory outlet or wherever you want. I'm not recommending the Chinese factory outlet in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just saying that that's the price you can get them there. Or you can do what we have done, and we have bought the gold filter, and they're $7. And you can wash it out and not use those brown coffee filters. And God forbid you use the white ones because they contain dioxins because of the bleach used to make them white. Paper's not white. Trees aren't white. Wood's not white. It's tan. Kind of like the brown color of a brown coffee filter. So if you use the white coffee filters, you're killing yourself. The brown ones are much, 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 much better. Better than that would be the gold, if you can clean them. And you can. You can wash them out by hand. And they'll last thousands of cups if you take care of it. Or you could do something else, and that's what we like to do. And you can buy a stainless steel percolator. And who makes the best one? In my opinion, Revere. Revereware. Revere space WARE. Revereware. And they're hard to find new ones, so you're going to have to buy a used one. And you can buy them on eBay. And heck, they've gone really expensive. I'm looking at them now. They used to be able to get them for $20. Maybe $5 shipping. No, not anymore. Now they're 40, 30s, mid 30s plus shipping, to 50s. They're stainless steel. They've got a basket, and they work great, and they will last generations. Ours are from the 1960s. We have a couple of them, different sizes, and I think you'd be delighted if you bought one. They have maybe a 6-cup and an 8-cup, and then one that's a little bigger, and they work great. So that's my little vent about carelessness and recklessness. And what are you going to feel and think when you see somebody walking around with a disposable cup of Starbucks coffee? What are you going to think? You're going to think, now there's a smart person. There's a brilliant gal, brilliant guy. Is that what you're going to think? Or are you going to think that person's careless and reckless and doesn't give a darn about anybody? Same with the K-Cups. I was talking with Steve Elkins in Florida, and he was asking me about two-cycle engines. And I said, hey, Steve, he wanted to know what kind of oil to use. And, of course, you use two-cycle engine oil in a two-cycle engine. The way a two-cycle engine works is it has 2 strokes rather than 4 strokes. There are no valves, per se, in a 2-stroke engine. It's less efficient, but the engine uses a mixture of oil with the gasoline. Now, some of these engines have a separate reservoir for oil, like a chainsaw, and for the gasoline. Others have, you mix the gasoline and the oil together. And the oil vaporizes in the carburetor, and it becomes a mist, and that is the lubrication inside the engine. There is no crankcase that splashes oil around. So it's only the oil that's mixed with the gasoline that actually does the lubrication and the cooling of the internal parts of the engine. So it's important that you have the right amount. Well, Steve was telling me that his equipment, the generator uses or recommends 50 to 1, meaning 50 parts of gasoline to 1 part of oil. So 50 ounces of gasoline to 1 ounce of two-cycle engine oil. By the way, two-cycle engine oil is not the same as four-cycle engine oil. So you need to buy two-cycle engine oil. And I said, don't do it. See, it used to be that when two-cycle engines were first made, they used 16 parts of gasoline to 1 part engine or two-cycle oil. Then they improved the engine to use 24 parts of gasoline to 1 part of oil. So there was less oil, less smoke, because it's hard to burn that lubricating oil. And then 32 to 1, so 32 parts of gasoline to 1 part of oil. Then 40 to 1, then 50 to 1. And some might even hit 100 to 1, 100 parts of gasoline. Well, that's not much oil. And so I said, take it down to 32 to 1, because that's what we do. Even though it recommends 50 to 1, we use 32 to 1, meaning almost twice as much oil as they recommend. And what happens? Well, the engine runs a little cooler, smokes a little more, but it runs way, way better and will last much, much longer. Now, if you idle it, if you idle like a chainsaw or a generator, what will happen is the carburetor the spark plug will tend to carbon up, and you might have to clean it more often. But if you run it normally, the way you normally run a chainsaw or a generator, that's probably not going to happen. So we even have two-stroke or two-cycle, we have a two-cycle dirt bike, and we have a two-cycle four-wheeler. And we do the same thing. We use 32 to 1 rather than the 50 to 1 that's recommended. And these devices are, one of them is almost 30 years old. No engine problems whatsoever, none. So I think that would be like the litmus test or the acid test of, does it really work the way I'm recommending? And the answer is it does. So I suggest that you consider that. Now, don't blame me if you don't like it, and don't blame me if it doesn't work. Do your own research, but that's what we do. And the report back from Steve Elkins in Florida was that it ran so much better using more oil than recommended. So I like 32 parts of gasoline to 1 part of oil. Okay, so that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Another thing I wanted to talk about was, I mentioned this before, shaving in the shower. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you shave in the shower, you can sharpen the blade of your razor, and you can get probably easily a month out of a blade, easily. I've gotten as much as a year. Yeah, I said a year out of a single blade. And the way that I do it, if I use a disposable type razor, and Schick has a 2-blade disposable razor, if you're going to buy them, they, I believe, make the best. The 2-blade Schick disposable razor, and it can last you easily a month. Longer if you sharpen it the way I'm going to tell you. So if you shave in the shower, you put soap in your right hand and you rub the soap on the palm of your left hand. Then you move the blade backwards across the palm of your left hand. Be careful you don't cut yourself. And by moving it backward, the pressure of your skin with the soap will re-sharpen that blade. And you have to rinse the razor every time you use it and shake it dry. And it'll last a month at least. Plus, I want to say something that might be a little upsetting. I was talking with Sunny Skidmore last night. She's a USA Prepares instructor. She's 90 years old, and she called me from the nursing home where she's receiving care. And we were talking about all kinds of things, and we're talking about radio and ratings. And I mentioned to her that I have zero interest. This will sound self-serving and conceited and me first, but it's not meant to be. I mentioned to her that I really don't care about ratings. In terms of trying to find what people want to hear and talk about that, I'm not interested in trying to find out what people want to hear, and because the GDP, we can't fix that. But there's no way that we can fix the vast stupidity, the vast ignorance that's out there. So I'm not trying to do that. But I am interested in talking about things that I'm interested in. And that's what we do. So I just want to tell you that that's where this comes from. We are not interested in being everything to everyone. It won't work for us. And I will not sell out my values, my morals, for increased ratings. I'm only interested in teaching things that I think are important. And I'm only interested in working with instructors who feel the same way. And I'm going to bring one on right now. Welcome, Kyle. How are you?
Good morning, Vince.
and you and I have talked about this off the air.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we have. You bet. I was going to kind of chime in with your chainsaw scenario and different things like that, too. I love it when you do these things because you've thought things through so well. I don't know, a few years ago, I picked up at a garage sale for $8 a electric chainsaw sharpener, the chainsaw blade sharpener. And it's a little wheel, and you can set the angle and the depth and that you want with this. They don't charge you very much even here. I mean, I think if you bring your chain in, they'll sharpen it for you for like $2.50. Well, it seems to me like every time I used to take those things in, they'd take off half of my chain. half of the tooth. So I stopped doing that, and I started doing it with a file, which I'm pretty decent at it, I got to admit. But just the electric ones where I can set every tooth so that I know that it's perfect and only take off the minimum. And I sharpen the angle, make it a little bit more dramatic. And boy, I'll tell you what, it's a wood-eating. All of my saws now are a wood-eating burgers. And to also piggyback on your oil solution, I kind of settled on 40-1. My chainsaws all call for 50-1. I run steels, but also to add an exclamation point to running it thicker, I run around 40, and I have a steel chainsaw that I have been running for right at 23 years. It's an old 031 steel, and I have since gotten found really good buys on 040, 036 and an 034 and 036, but they're a little lighter weight and a little bigger, a little more powerful saws, but that 031 still runs. I mean, it's had everything happen to it that could be done, and it still starts and runs like a champ. And I find that the steels, anyway, because they run at such a high RPM, when I drop the oil ratio down there to 32-1, they run okay, but like you said, you do have to clean that spark plug more. And I have found that with my 031, 34, and 36, if I go up to 40, I don't have to clean the spark plug, but about half as often. The other thing that is incredibly important, I've burned up 2 Husqvarnas, so I kind of went away from them. I've just had incredible luck with steels. But the big thing that is seeming to be very critical with steel chainsaws is they have a design on them, for sure with the 034 and the 036, where the air cleaner will get clogged up with dust somehow, chainsaw dust like crazy. And so pretty much almost every time I take this saw out, if I'm going to use it a lot, when I get back, it has to be, I take the air cleaner off and spray it out and clean it, and so that it's ready to go next time. But it does tend to be one of those things that makes a big difference if you're cutting a lot of wood.
Yeah, I've got a couple quick comments. Number one, I wanted to mention to you that George will be joining us on Monday. We're going to be talking about guns, rifle, pistol, shotgun, and reloading, things that you need to know class. And so Kyle and George and I will be doing, and I think we've got roughly 150 years of experience with guns. So none of us is a gun store owner, but we've got experience with them. So we'll share that with you on Monday. And you mentioned the chain and grinding, and I've done the same thing as you. We used to bring our chains to have them sharpened, and it was $3 here in the corrupt state of Missouri. But that was not the point. The point was they did exactly what you said. They wanted to make sure that they took off half of the cutting surface of the chain, and they would overheat by grinding so quickly. They would overheat the cutting edge, and they would become softer, and they'd work fine for a short time, and then they would stop cutting as well because they overheated the chain. So not only did they wear out our chains faster by removing the cutting surface, they overheated them. So what Kyle's talking about is you can sharpen your chain and take off, like if you're sharpening a knife, you can just sharpen it and sharpen it. Pretty soon you don't have much of a knife left. And that's the same thing with the chainsaw chain. So you want to take off the absolute minimum each time. You want to do it slowly so you don't overheat the cutting surface so that it will stay hard and remain sharp longer. So for $8, what a deal. You get better deals than I do by far. I can't compete with the deals that you get, even though if we were going to run a race, you're going to beat me by a long shot. But I try. And those kinds of things are not around here because people are really poor here, and they don't have things like that to sell. They don't sell, really cool top-of-the-line tools. They just don't. If you want to buy a lathe, you're going to look for a long time. If you want to buy any quality equipment, you're going to look for a really long time before you can find it here in Missouri. So, but I'm agreeing with you, but I like the 32 to 1. 40 to 1's fine too. I just think more for us, and we don't have steel. Well, actually, we have one steel chainsaw, but a small one, like a limbing saw. But ours are Husqvarna, and I've had it with Husqvarna. The case of the main body of a Husqvarna chainsaw is plastic, and it will vibrate ultimately and crack. And so when you need a replacement for the plastic that you hold on to of a Husqvarna chainsaw, it costs half as much as the whole darn chainsaw did. So that's it for us. We're moving to steel.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who is a Husqvarna guy, and that's fine, but he only buys, and he'll buy brand new saws, don't get me wrong, but he only buys the professional line of saws from Husqvarna. Are yours professional, or are they the homeowner type?
No, ours are the farm grade. So they're, I don't know if you'd call it professional, but it's the farm grade. They're like $500.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's actually, I burnt up two. Is it called the Rancher or something along those lines?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
yes, it is.
I had two of them, and I burnt both of them up. Mm-hmm. And I was running the same exact thing that I was running in my steels, but the steels would just keep going, and they're still going. And I burnt two Husqvarnas up. In fact, I've got one sitting up in my loft right now that it just fell apart, basically, And I was running it, like I said, the exact same gas, exact same everything. Mm-hmm. But it was a lightweight saw, and I liked using it. It just I couldn't get more than I think I got 3 years out of one, and I only got 2 out of the other. And so I kind of just left Husqvarna alone.
Well, actually, they have become a miserable company. They used to make pretty good products, at least for a while. They made a fabulous rifle. I mean, a Husqvarna hunting rifle, as good as it gets. And that company's really old, hundreds of years old, literally. But that orange Husqvarna chainsaw, even though it's like farm grade, it's lousy. And not only that, I tried to contact Husqvarna corporate to say, what gives? What's with this saw? And I can't even get them to respond. The only way you can contact those turkeys is through messaging. You send them a message, and it goes out into the ether, never to be seen again. So I'm done with Husqvarna. I will not buy another one of their products. That's it, period. And we're moving to steel.
I totally I agree with you. The other thing you mentioned on the Husqvarna rifle, people don't realize that sometimes J.C. Higgins, which was a Penny's company back then, Penny's used to sell guns. And Montgomery Ward actually sold guns, and they were getting Husqvarna to build the rifles for them, and then they'd turn around and stick their little brand on them. But if you check out, it's made by Husqvarna. I bought a friend of mine's son who was just starting out, absolutely beautiful, 30-06 with beautiful wood on it. It said J.C. Higgins on it, and we got that for $300 with rings because somebody thought, it doesn't have a brand name. It's not a Remington, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And we went out and sighted this rifle in, and with factory ammunition, we were shooting a 3/4-inch group at 100 yards.
Well, that's like what we're doing. And they literally made fabulous, fabulous rifles. And I believe J.C. Higgins was also sold at Sears, Roebuck and Company.
Yep. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yep.
Because
it was Sears.
Yeah, my first bicycle, I only had one bicycle, was a Sears, Roebuck and Company, J.C. Higgins. Still have it from the 1950s. It was way too big for me. My dad bought me what was called an English racer. I mean, that was the terminology. So it had thin tires rather than the American Schwinn, which was really heavy frame. So this was a lighter weight. It was magnificent quality. I don't know who made it, but it was branded JC. Higgins. So those J.C. Higgins products were quite the cat's meow. They were really, really fine. And it breaks my heart to think and to know that Sears is just it's on life support. And they're going down. And it was so good because they had people who would evaluate products. And they would look at the products and they would say, here's what we want. This is the quality we want. These are the features we want. And they would build it so that you could get maximum value. If you bought a Kenmore, a Craftsman, a J.C. Higgins, it was like best in class. And you didn't have to worry about making a mistake because whether you bought good, better, or best within the Sears line, it was all good, all of it.
Yep. Amen.
Now,
that's true. It was all good. Yep.
Even their, what they called good quality. Now, Kyle, please stick with us if you'd like. We're talking about some tips that I've written down in the book, and I wanted to mention one of them with Kyle. By the way, Kyle, I get a number of calls here at the farmhouse, and your name comes up. And when people talk about Kyle, they say, I'm paraphrasing, but it's darn close to a quote. I really like Kyle. He is so sincere. He's real. He's just a great guy. I'd love to be his neighbor. I'd love to meet him. That's what they say about Kyle. No one has said anything different from that. So I just want to tell you, that's the reputation that Kyle in Montana has. Kyle, rule number 9 here at the farm, this applies to everybody at our farm, you will carry a knife. And when our children, one of them was in high school, I said, rule number 9. Well, Dad, they don't allow knives. I said, well, that's their rules. My rule is you will have a knife. Now, if you don't show anybody, no one's going to know. So you will have a knife in your pocket. And so our son, who was started the public training camp as freshman year in high school, that's the first time he ever went to school, other than homeschool, he had a knife in his pocket all the time. So I'm admitting that on the worldwide. Kyle, do you have a rule similar to that in your family?
Even my daughters carry knives. I have come across about, I don't know, it must have been 10 years ago. I was talking to this friend of mine and who I hadn't seen for a long time, and I noticed he whipped his knife out. We were working on a little farm project thing, and he whipped his knife out, and it had this weird coloring to it. And it was one of those super cheap little $3, $4, $5 knives. It didn't have a plastic handle, but that's about as still close. It did not have a plastic handle, so it's about as close as it came. Well, I thought, man, that's weird. I asked him about it. I said, so what in the world are you doing? I've never seen a knife with that coloring. He said, well, I'll tell you what I do. I don't buy expensive knives anymore because I just have a tendency when I'm working out here that they get lost. They get hung up on, hay, or they'll get hung up on a baling twine or something, and yank them out of my pocket, and I don't even find them again till the spring or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So he says, I buy these cheap knives, and then I get my torch out. He said, first thing, I sharpen them really sharp. He said, and then I get my torch out, and I slowly, I go quick with the torch, back and forth, really quick, and I slowly heat them up to red hot. And he said, then I'll have ready a can of cold, used motor oil. And he said, as soon as it gets red hot all throughout the blade, I drop the whole knife into this cold, used motor oil. And it comes out with this coloring, but it also makes it so that the edge lasts forever. And so I had a whole bunch of knives. It's about I ain't got any money, and so about the only thing I can afford to collect is knives. I never met a cool knife I didn't like, And so anyway, I started doing that with all of my knives, and it is absolutely unbelievable how good that works. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that's heating and oil quenching. Yes, a great way to go. And yes, it does work. So, Kyle, the knife that I prefer for our family, yes, they get lost, but I keep one on the inside of my pocket, and a little clip hangs on the outside. So all my jeans have this wear mark where the knife goes in and out, because I carry one with me at all times. I use it on the farm. It's a tool. And if I get stopped by somebody, do I have a weapon? No. I have tools. And so the knife that I think is the finest, best value that I have found is one made by Gerber, Gerber, and it's called a paraframe. Now, they have a little one called a mini, and they have a standard paraframe. So it's a metal handle, metal blade, lock blade, and they're about $10. As a matter of fact, the TSA confiscates steals them, so many of them. You can buy stolen merchandise in the form of a knife on eBay. I'm looking at it right now, and it says that they're confiscated. These are all kinds of knives, and they sell the paraframes, and you can get them for maybe $7, $8, $9 a piece shipped. Okay? So everybody in our family has one. They hold the edge really nicely. They clip on the inside of your pocket, and just a little clip shows on the outside so they don't fall out of your pocket, and they don't wear a hole through the bottom of your pocket. So that's what I carry, and I use it all the time, and we cut things all the time. And one of our instructors and I were at the scene of an accident. A guy crashed into a concrete piling with a traffic light on top and deployed the airbags, knocked him unconscious, and we had to cut him out of the car. And he just pulled out his knife and with a serrated edge, sliced right through the seatbelt. And there were a bunch of us at rescue, and we pulled him out, and then while the car was on fire. So you need to have a knife that's sharp enough to cut your seatbelt. Kyle, any quick comments?
Well, I have a Gerber in my pocket just as we're talking. Exactly. I don't have the paraframe, but I have one just like it. Very similar.
There you go. And none of our discussion today was orchestrated. I had no idea that Kyle was going to call in. I really appreciate you calling in. And Kyle's going to be with us in Georgia, New Hampshire on Monday, and we're going to talk about guns. So, and we'll answer your questions. If you want to call in, we'll answer your questions. But we will not tell you what we have. That's off limits. We're not going to tell you what we have, but we'll answer your questions. That's Monday. 2 hours. Kyle, thank you so much.